get Ocho's thoughts.
For the first time since Patrick Mahomes beat the Bengals in the AFC Championship game on a bum ankle, Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow will face off. Let's go!
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC. I'm Matt Swanson here with Matt Hamilton, Matt Lane on a Matter Day on the lab. Matthew Lane, it was great seeing you this weekend, but also your hair game is on point. This is the longest I've seen your hair. I am getting wildly impressed with this flow, and I'm really disappointed in the entire time I've known you that you've never blessed us with this hair.
Buddy, this is the longest anybody has ever seen my hair in my entire life. If I can't wait for the day that I wake up and my wife just takes the clippers to it while I'm sleeping, so it has to be changed. She is not having near as good of a time as you are, but yeah, we're rocking it. We got the hair going. I'm happy we're doing this show because I haven't got to sit down here and talk with our good pal, Matt Hamilton here. So I just want real quick, Matt, before, how are you? Yeah. All the pleasantries out of the way. What did you think about the Chiefs and the Ravens game last week? Just quick thoughts.
Oh man. Quick thoughts. Love seeing this offense starting to look like itself again. After what we saw last year, Xavier Worthy, it's just the tip of the iceberg, I think, of what we're going to see from him and what he can bring to the table here. So much explosive playability and how he affects everything too. I mean, you were ahead of it, Maddie, with the Rashee Rice game and how having that dynamic, more speed in the offense is going to help open things up underneath for him. That was awesome to see. I mean, it's the end of the game, the way they let things get closer than they should be is another story. But it's hard. Week one, it's hard to have a better performance than that all the way around.
The Chiefs do that a lot, and it never comes back to bite them. Like, very rarely it's always just feels like, okay, offense maybe 4 minutes it and doesn't, run the clock out, and it's up to the defense to win the game. And then it's just like, it's something like that happens at the end of the game for this team to close things out. But yeah, but
hey, being a defensive team like they were last year, that was the case. Like, even when they had like Mahomes and this offense firing at like historical levels, Andy still was pretty that's okay. We'll punt this fourth down away, and we're going to rely on our defense, who's like the 28th best in the league, to get this figured out. And outside, from the moment they brought in Spags and maybe moved on from Bob Sutton, that seemed to treat them pretty well.
Yeah. That's where I'd say it's worked out. Yeah.
It's done okay. It's been all right since that. It's been okay. But thank you, everybody.
Super Bowls they didn't win. So
that's a good point. And unfortunately, the team that we're about to talk about ended their season a little too soon in one of those instances. It was the Cincinnati Bengals. We are previewing week 2 of this season, and it is a big one. The Chiefs move on from last year's AFC Championship opponent to 2 years ago's AFC Championship opponent. Just two tough teams right off the top. I know that this Bengals team is coming off of a loss, but before we get into kind of previewing both sides of the football, do you feel like there is pressure on the Chiefs to win this game heading into this game? Like, how do you feel, Matthew? Lane.
Is that a me? Okay, yeah. So I heard Matthew and I knew it was me. I just wanted to I wanted to linger in that for a second. Nah, there's no pressure in this game for the Chiefs. For the simple fact of this, like, they have routinely lost to the Frog Goals in the regular season and other teams, the Bills, other Ravens, throughout this run where they've been making it back to the Super Bowls, because they know once they go back into the playoffs, everything's a little different. Everybody plays a little bit tighter. Things get a little bit more serious. So losing a game in the regular season to any of these other AFC contenders, like, is hardly something that's going to impact the Chiefs. They aren't going to take it personally and start circling playoff matchups. They're not going to start making their entire season based around that rematch. This is something they are used to. Now, if they win this game, they go up 2-0 over two other teams that should be in contention for a high seed in the AFC. Yeah, that matters. I don't want to say the game doesn't matter. I just don't think that there's like a lot of pressure on the Chiefs in terms of the outcome of this game is going to be drastically different one way or the other, and it's going to kind of impact their preparation or anything heading into it.
Yeah, I think all the pressure in this game is squarely on the Bengals after the way they started this season. I know they've started 0-2 each of the last 2 years, and they rebounded last year before Burrow got hurt. Obviously, the year before that, they go to the AFC Championship game. So they've done it from an 0-2 start before, but you can't keep digging yourself into a hole to start the season year after year after year and expect things to just work out. So, yeah, I think all the pressure's on Cincy.
Yeah, I definitely, there's a lot more pressure on them, and this is definitely, like, to your point, a team that has started slow. But I think there's some things from this game that at least give me some reasons I think the Bengals are going to come out looking a lot better than they did in the weeks or in last week's game against, make no mistake about it, not a good football team. They played a bad football team at home and they blew it and they lost. And it will be all the more hilarious if the Chiefs are able to go 0, or if Chiefs are able to make them 0-2. But let's move on and talk about the offensive side of the football.
Real quick, one of my favorite things about leading up to this matchup. That's okay. I got this. One of my favorite things is on the Bengals official website. They're inviting people to come out to the stadium and to do a watch party of the game. That's cool. I think it's a pretty cool idea. They got to collect. They're charging people like $99. You got to collect that money so you can pay Jamar Chase. I get it. But beyond that, in their little blurb to their fans, they said a rematch of the 2021 AFC Championship game. That was just kind of funny. They went back an extra year to call it a rematch of the 2021 game and maybe not, recollecting the following year or anything like that. I just enjoyed that. I thought that was fun by them.
The actual rematch, are they even going to show the first half? Like they shouldn't even show the first half of that game. They should just start the second half of that game because the Chiefs are smoking in the first half.
It was a good time.
Anyways, talking about the offensive side of the football for the Chiefs. So one of the things that was really difficult for the Cincinnati Bengals in week 1, really rough tackling. Some really, really poor tackling from that team. I would love to say that I anticipate the tackling to be as bad as it was last year. And there probably will be some inconsistencies, I'm sure, too. But when you're looking at a team that has started slow, when you're looking at a team that has historically kind of, ramped things up and used the beginning of the season kind of as their preseason, I do think that tackling will get better. So I don't think I'm resting on the laurels that the Chiefs will be able to, break as many tackles as the Bengals missed last week. I think it kind of just ties to everything, though. I think the run game has to. I think you have improvements in the run game from what we saw last week from the Chiefs, and I think hopefully they're able to put the Bengals in some situations to miss some tackles. What say you, Matt Hamilton?
Yeah, and I don't know that it'll necessarily get better. The Bengals were the 26th ranked run D a year ago. They especially fell off a cliff after DJ Reader got hurt. He's no longer there. I like Sheldon Rankins. He can't do everything that DJ Reader can do, especially when it comes to the run game and DJ's ability to just make things so much easier for those linebackers at the second level to get free and roam and make plays. So it is a legitimate concern to me. And I do think, I think the Patriots have a better run game than I think anybody really gave them credit for or wanted to give them credit for coming into the year. Ramondre Stevenson is fantastic. It was a huge point of emphasis. We were up there at Patriots camp, and all they wanted to talk about was their run game and how good they were going to be and how much they were going to lean on it. So they knew in that building they had something, and it showed there week 1. But yeah, I am concerned about this Bengals run defense in this game for sure. And I do think their secondary has gotten better than it was a year ago, especially getting Von Bell back there. But if they can't stop the run, it's going to be an issue.
It's something specifically stopping the run. That's something we kind of saw in the preseason, and you don't ever want to lean too much into the preseason. But we saw a couple teams, whether it was the starters or a mix of starters and rotational guys that were pushing around this Cincinnati front line. And I don't think that the Chiefs offensive line necessarily dominated or completely controlled the Ravens offense or defensive line or anything. However, they held their own. It's a very good defensive line the Ravens have. I thought they designed some of the run plays really well, and the Chiefs didn't accomplish a lot on like a per carry basis, but they blocked stuff up well. They didn't seem like they were getting pushed around, which is something that had happened to them in the past before they kind of rebuilt this offensive line from scratch. So if we're looking just at paper, yeah, I would expect a Chiefs offensive line, especially now that they're leaning into a little bit more of this gap stuff with the way they're using their tight ends on this. I don't even know what we're going to call it yet. I need somebody much smarter than me with this jet motion that they're countering it back out into actually running counter, doing stuff like that and getting downhill from relatively spread formations has been a lot of fun. I really could see that being a big area that the Chiefs try to not lean on necessarily, but take advantage of a Cincinnati defensive front that isn't the greatest at it. I mean, like Trey Hendrickson, awesome player at defensive end. He's not like incredible versus the run all the time. He is definitely a guy that can get pushed around, that will take some chances. And now you remove DJ Reader from the equation and you don't have anyone that makes up for what they lost with him. So yeah, the Patriots, I think, had a really good run game in the first week. The Chiefs weren't as successful or efficient, but I really like what they did. And I think they might actually be able to find a little bit more success this week on the ground. I would enjoy seeing, maybe not all first downs, but a little bit more early down running, try to get ahead of the sticks a little bit better than they were able to against the Ravens. And this is a good matchup for it.
I actually think we're going to see a little bit more Carson Steele in this game for some reason. Like, I just feel like, they got his feet wet a little bit last week and, they've given him a week and a half here. I could see him getting a little bit more run this week. I know like one play, he kind of got stopped in his tracks behind the line of scrimmage on one of his carries, but even being able to solve a problem there and back in the backfield and make it a negative 2-yard run instead of negative 4 or 5, I thought was good. I think this could be a game where you see him like, hey, a team that struggled to tackle last week, why don't you try to tackle Carson Steele a little bit? Just see what happens. Let's just test that theory out pretty quick. Matt Hamilton, give me something on the offensive side of the ball you're looking for with the Chiefs.
I mean, in addition to, I think this is going to be a big Pacheco game. I really do. Not to harp on this point too much, but I do think the Chiefs are going to have an advantage there in the run game, and I would like to see them establish the run. And I think Pacheco could have a big day. Obviously, I think Mahomes is going to do his thing, but I would like to see them take advantage, show that they can run the ball and kind of run it down the Bengals' throats and take advantage of what I think is the biggest weakness on this team. And not that you need to, when you have Patrick Mahomes, you don't need to keep away from an opposing quarterback, but still, the longer you can possess the ball, that Bengals offense is going to be pressing. And I think the longer you possess the ball, you're going to force Burrow into doing some things, into forcing the issue a little bit and making some turnover worthy plays. So the more you can possess that ball, the more you can get the run game going with Pacheco, the more uncomfortable you make an already uncomfortable offense.
Yeah. Sticking with like the run game there, it's going to be big because with the addition of Geno Stone and getting Von Bell back, Big Lou is going to feel a little bit more confident and going back to the defense that I want to say gave the Chiefs a little bit more trouble a couple of years ago where they're dropping 8 guys. Yeah. They're showing all this different stuff. They're rotating post snap. They couldn't really do that as much last year. So they're going to get back into their familiar zone that they gave some Chiefs the trouble with. And the Chiefs, when you look back on that, they kind of did. Mahomes had some issues. I don't say, always a ton. It did seem like he kind of figured it out as time went on, but they had some issues trying to figure out how to attack it, where they wanted to go without forcing the ball. And so if you can get the ground game working a little bit, if you can make the Bengals feel like their defensive line is being overpowered, both in the run game or when they are rushing the passer, you can kind of control that tempo. The Chiefs stuck with a lot of heavy personnel against the Ravens. I wouldn't be surprised to see them continue to do that here too, just to limit. You got to be a lot more basic if you get out there in base defense or even just like a relatively normal nickel against certain formations. You have to be pretty clear in your intentions. You can't get as exotic. We know that all too well as a fan that roots for Steve Spagnuolo. He is really upset when he gets stuck in base frequently, right? So the Bengals don't want to do that either. Not even leaning on the run game, just being efficient with it, being effective and not going away with it. So Pacheco, we mentioned some Carson Steele. I think both those guys could have a good job here. And I was kind of looking through some stats here. the Bengals, the fraud goals at this point in time, actually really struggled to tackle versus the Patriots. And I was kind of going back to last year too. And they weren't as bad last year throughout the whole season, but they definitely, especially in the secondary, they don't tackle particularly well. They're not a great tech. They hit. Mike Hilton will come up and make hits. Cam Taylor-Britt will come and make hits, but those guys aren't securing tackles at a high rate. Both of them have, 18 and 20% missed tackle rate over the past couple seasons. Geno Stone right there in that same range with less snaps. So you get some running backs at the second level, you get them set up to where it's a one-on-one with Pacheco versus those DBs. You might feel pretty good about his ability to make a guy miss and go turn this 3-yard gain into 8, 9, 10 yards.
And Matt, I want to go back to
I'd like to.
Sorry, Matt.
Let's go. Another Matt cutting him off.
No, I want to go back to your point on Lou Anarumo's game plan from that 2021 AFC Championship game, because I think that was a critical moment in the evolution of Patrick Mahomes. I think it was a different Patrick Mahomes in that game, and he was begging, as you mentioned, they were dropping so many guys in car. He was begging him to give it on a bunch of those RPOs, and Patrick was trying to do it all himself. And I think we've seen, last year was proof he's going to take what you're giving him now, and he's not going to fall into he's not going to try to do it all himself. If you're giving him the run, if you're trying to bait him into turnovers, he's going to let his defense win the game if he has to. So, if Lou tries to go with that game plan again, I don't think it's going to go well for Cincinnati, which just makes things 10 times harder for him trying to scheme things up this week.
Well, the Bengals did some good things and kind of slowed last. So, the Chiefs were able to move the ball a little bit, but they were getting, forced into a lot of field goals this time around last year when Joe Burrow wasn't playing in that game. So, who knows how the Chiefs approach that thing. But that was like the first signs of life. That game against the Bengals last year was kind of the first signs of life for me that, hey, they're kind of getting back to the basics. They're moving the ball a little bit more effectively. There was some red zone struggles, but they were putting points on the board, and they wound up putting 25 points on the board, but most of them were field goals. I think one thing back to the run game, you already see Logan Wilson didn't practice because of a knee injury. Chris Jenkins did not practice today because of injury. BJ Hill was limited. Those are some key players if you're looking at the front seven for the Bengals defense, and they're already seeing some injury issues, some DNPs this early in the season is never a good sign either. So it's something at least, hey, establish a level of physicality with the Bengals front too. And just kind of wear that group out a little bit because they're going to be playing through some stuff, kind of sounds like, in this game as well. Matthew Lane, what do you got for us on this offensive preview? What are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm going to be watching how Andy Reid takes these fraud goal linebackers and Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson. It puts them in the torture chamber. He is gonna lock them up like Roquan Smith, great linebacker, the second best linebacker in the NFL. I don't even know if it's questionable. And he was having a rough go, whether it was trying to handle Rashee Rice over the middle of the field, trying to figure out which tight end he's taking in which part, because they got Noah Gray and Travis Kelce doing a lot of the same stuff and doing that, little switch right before the snap comes in. Then even in some of the run game pieces, they were getting Creed Humphrey up onto Roquan Smith really quickly on some of these big runs. So I just think that you're looking at two good linebackers, Wilson, Pratt, good linebackers. Neither are, though, I think, even on a Roquan Smith level. And what Andy was doing to Roquan Smith in that first week, he had his head spinning. You got one-on-one to Rashee Rice and so much extra space. You have them trying to handle all these different mesh concepts coming from different angles. So I just think it's going to be another game similar to that, especially if we keep going back to this, the front line for Cincy might not be the defensive line might not be getting any pressure on their own. We go back to that. We keep going back to that 2021 game, but if we remember right, even when they rushed 3, it wasn't that Patrick Mahomes was under zero pressure, under a 3-man rush. There were times where Orlando Brown Jr. was getting beat around the edge, or the pocket was starting to collapse. If that doesn't happen in this game, that's a lot of coverage. That's a lot of space for those linebackers. They might have to rush for. They might have to get some extra guys up there. And I just think that the way Andy Reid, Matt Nagy are clicking right now, I think they kind of have, the old Shanahan scope. Everybody's seen the meme now out there on linebackers, because what they have with Kelce, with Gray, with Rashee Rice all across the middle of the field, and then we're going to throw the speed of Worthy coming across. That's a lot to handle for any team, let alone a team that I don't think has elite coverage linebackers.
Hamilton, you got anything on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And we've seen, I think Pratt especially is a guy that you can go after. Logan Wilson, we've seen make some plays. He's got some decent ball skills. He's come up with some big interceptions in his time. I mean, Pratt did too against the Raiders, but we've seen Pratt get picked on a little bit too. So with the way the Chiefs can operate, and as you mentioned, the way they were able to scheme up last week, and getting Rashee Rice matched up on Trenton Simpson, who for the position he was in didn't do a bad job. I thought he was kind of impressive. His athleticism flashed, but some of those moments they were able to scheme up. Getting Rashee on a linebacker, I mean, that's a no-win situation for anybody. So that's a great point. I'm looking forward to seeing if they can keep that going.
Well, and hey, look, I think the thinking for the Ravens and the thinking for the entirety of the National Football League is everybody was sitting in too high and trying to just not give up a bunch of explosives in week one. And it's a very conservative approach with across the board in the National Football League. Well, even with the Chiefs, even with the Chiefs, the gravity of the Chiefs, like I think the Bengals will probably do something pretty similar. They're going to play some softer coverage down there. They're going to, try to keep a lid on things, tighten up in the red like they did last year. Like I think that's going to be a very similar model. But even if you look at some of the stuff that they did with Rashee Rice against the Ravens, there were a couple opportunities for a turnover. And it was off of tips. Like, it's not necessarily going to be like, I got Mahomes here. It wasn't going to be like, I confused Patrick Mahomes. It's going to be, I'm going to try to throw a slant to Rashee Rice. I'm going to be extra physical. I might get a pass interference call on me. I'm going to test the boundaries of physicality with a Rashee Rice there over the middle of the field. And if a ball gets tipped, there's going to be guys there ready to make a play. Like, I bet you the Bengals are working on, hey, our safeties, we're going to work on, we're on a lot of tip drills this week. Because one of those balls on those little slants is going to go up in the air, and we're going to be able to capitalize it. And I know it was a dig rather than the slants that we saw. The new slant boy, our new slant king, Rashee Rice. But there's some plays in the middle of the field that were to be had, and like I think the Bengals might be okay with seeing if the Chiefs can make a big mistake on one of those plays that they've had so much success with, because there was at least one that got tipped in the air, and like that can be the difference in a game like this. Could have been the difference in the Bengals game last week. Let's go offensive players to watch for the Kansas City Chiefs. Hamilton, what you got?
I'm going a little bit outside the box on this one. Well, I went really outside the box last week, going a little outside the box this week. I'm looking at Samaje Perine. A little bit of a revenge game situation for him up against his former team. And I just think with all the creative stuff Andy does in the red zone, I feel like he's also the type of coach that's he knows that this game means a little something extra to Samaje. I think we're going to see something drawn up to get Samaje a touchdown in this game. That's just a feeling. Gut feeling I have.
I love that one, honestly, just because if he's had 10 extra days to get kind of back caught up to speed, so he should be fully integrated within the game plan. Yep. And I think that's a great call. What do you got, Matthew Lane?
I mean, they were, inches away from having a big play just even last week in his first week. So yeah, like I think that's a good one. Yeah. I like that one with the pseudo revenge aspect too. I was torn on this one. I'm going to go with Xavier Worthy because I'm just like, so we talked about it. Rashee Rice is getting, had a huge game, right? And I think when anybody goes back and watches that, everyone's going to see the 2 touchdowns for Worthy, but your eyes are going to kind of go to Rashee Rice as you're watching that game. He was clearly the guy. That was where the offense was funneling. You kind of go back and look, and the end around was exceptional from Worthy, but then you go back and look, okay, blown coverage for a touchdown. They ran him underneath, on the shallow part of mesh and got him his other catch. He didn't seem like his impact was being felt throughout the entire game. So I wonder if you have a team and the Bengals that are going to focus on Travis Kelce like they always do, as every team will. And then they're also going to be keeping an eye out for Rashee Rice. And how are you going to keep, both of those guys under wraps when they're working over the middle of the field, when they're doing all this different stuff in motion and those between the numbers? That might leave some space on the outside. That might leave some corners that are going to be asked to win a foot race or at least match a foot race with Worthy. And while, you like guys that they have in the secondary for Cincy, they don't have the Ravens secondary. They don't have those level of corners. So I think we might actually get a chance to air the ball out a little bit. And when you really go back and look, there was a couple other plays that I think Worthy had a step that you could have really tested out his speed if the protection held up in week 1. So I think this week, maybe he won't score 2 touchdowns, but we might have a game where his impact's felt, a little bit more series after series, drive after drive, rather than just the big explosive plays.
one of the visions I kind of see, just early indicators with this offense, it does feel like they are trying to create more explosion after the catch for some of their best players. They're not going to be able to necessarily get over the top as consistently, but they're trying to get creative in how they work within these confines. And one of them is, hey, let's give Rashee Rice chances to catch the ball and to run after the catch, because he's terrifying for teams to try to tackle after that. So that empty slant, great little concept. It kind of feels like the Chiefs, and so it's a worthy take, but it kind of feels like the Chiefs are living in this space where they're trying to create like a second level run through for Worthy, where it's not a true deep over, it's not a crosser, it's almost like an intermediate. They're trying to create a little traffic where he's running off of a curl, off of a tight end same side. He's like running underneath the curl a little bit, and they're trying to. It's like a more shallow deep over almost. It feels like they want to try to hit a couple of those here or there. And so like I'm just kind of seeing like how they're trying to occupy that space and how they're trying to get him on the run at 10 yards, 12, 15, somewhere in there, rather than like a true deep over. It's been fascinating to watch. And I'm curious to see if they're going to try to get some of those opportunities again, if some of the theories are right. But it feels like the way the Chiefs are trying to create more explosion is by giving some of these crazy weapons chances to run through a little bit better. And that's what I've been kind of paying attention to. But
that was team's ability to run with. I mean, like, you're just testing defense's ability to run with them, right? Like, when you go vertical, you can cheat it a little bit, right? You're going to play off, you're going to bail, you can have help. If it's just going to be some kind of form of crossing route, right? And especially if you're playing off and you don't disrupt it, like that essentially just becomes a foot race. And it's just the protection hold up across the field. Is there any other obstacle in his way, or is the spacing perfect on the concept? And then you just have a horizontal foot race, right? And Mahomes can put the ball on that person whenever, wherever, from anywhere in the pockets. Like, I think that's a really good way to try to use them. And I'm with you. We've heard it before, right? Andy Reid and this offense, some of those crossing routes aren't to a specific yardage marker. It's kind of a fine green grass and cross there, and then read the safety that you're running at is a little bit what they've done. And that gets them in trouble sometimes. But for the most part, like, it allows the receiver to be reactive. And everything we've heard about Worthy is he kind of he understands the game. He understands it. He sees it well. So I pick up what you're seeing there, because I think that is where they're trending, Kent.
Yeah, and even then, I'm not even sure it's entirely like an ad lib too. Like, I think there's intentionality to that space they're trying to occupy, and it's fascinating me. Sorry, Hamilton, did you have something there?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, with Worthy, the thing that impressed me the most, like going back to his Texas tape, even, was just you think of these guys that run 4.2s, speed guys, vertical threats. He is such a savvy football player, and he operates so well in the middle of the field, in tight spaces, in the red zone, like. You get the ball in his head. We saw it on the end around. His ability to find that alley and explode through there. There are a lot of speed guys that are going to try to get to the sideline there and stay away from all that traffic in the middle of the field. But he has vision with the ball in his hands. He's going to find those alleys and trust his speed, and not, he's not afraid of mixing it up and getting in there.
I was going to go Worthy for all those reasons, but I'm going to go Kingsley Suamataia. It's all right. He steals them all the time.
You just got two then. Yeah.
I got him. Yeah. I was going to go Worthy, but it's Kingsley Suamataia for me. And I think a good first game for him, a good chance for him to, kind of get his feet wet and get exposed to the National Football League. Up and down performance as expected, but like we said, hey, it was playable tackle, and that's a great baseline to start with. You're not like losing games because of what he's doing at the tackle position. And I think the arrow's pointing up for him, and he's going to continue to get better. So I think this is just another continued test for him. It's not an experiment, but it's one of the big questions I think that exists for this team and their long-term outlook in January, into week 17 and week 18, perhaps, unless they
when they have all those weeks off,
unless they have the 18th week off. But I am paying attention to that, because like he's one of the big storylines. It's a quiet storyline that is probably gonna exist for the majority of the season, and so he's definitely somebody I'm paying attention to. We're gonna take a break. We're gonna talk about the Chiefs right after this.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
Make sure you're taking advantage of that code KCSN, because that is the best discount available on Tickets for Less. When you use promo code KCSN, when you type that in, you're getting the best discount available. at KCSN. All right, let's talk about the Chiefs versus the Frogles offense. Matthew, what's the biggest thing you're watching? Matthew Lane. Sorry, there's 3 Matts on the show now on Matter Days. Matthew Lane, what's the biggest thing you are watching on the defensive side of the ball for the Chiefs?
Anyway, we're starting with me. We're gonna get a little bit more detailed than we would normally, like right off the top. Third down defense. No,
Matt Hamilton. Let's start with you. I'm just kidding.
Okay, no, never mind.
No, I'm kidding. Go, Maddie. Go, Maddie.
Third down defense. The Frogles weren't particularly good on 3rd and 4th down against the Patriots. The Chiefs and them kind of faced roughly the same yardage to go on 3rd downs. The Chiefs were kind of converting at like 15% at a better rate than they were. It's just something that they didn't do a great job of operating in on 3rd down in that first week. And if you go back to when the Chiefs have had success against them over the past couple of years, or any team really, that's kind of been what they are. The Chiefs aren't gonna, they don't consistently get teams stuck in 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, or anything along like that. But those 3rd and mediums, and then as long as it's out of super short, Spags can get real exotic, do all of his weird looks, and get blitzes coming from all these different angles or nothing. And it's just who's gonna win that 3rd down matchup. There's been games in the past, the regular season, when the pressure's less and the Frogles can win, they win those matchups. And then we remember like the Jamar Chase picking up the first down to win the regular season game the last time when Joe Burrow last played the Chiefs in the regular season. But then you go to the playoffs, and now all of a sudden you have Joe Burrow throwing up interceptions to Jalen Watson on these later downs. So just who wins that 3rd down matchup? Where does it go? The Chiefs did a good job getting to 3rd down against the Ravens. They did a good job for the most part of shutting a lot of it down. And then Lamar Jackson scrambled and picked a lot of them up. Joe Burrow's very mobile, but he's not going to pull off the same stuff that Lamar Jackson did. So if you can shut down the structure of the play, force them to kind of go into the ad-lib mode, especially the way the right side of that offensive line played in the first week, that could go really well for the Chiefs.
Yeah, and I thought a big part of the struggles that the Bengals had on 3rd down in week 1 was what Christian Gonzalez, I thought was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And what he was able to do on Jamar Chase. And so I don't, that's going to be interesting to see, is McDuffie, if T. Higgins isn't out there, is McDuffie just shadowing him? Is he going to be able to have the same impact? I'm going to be looking for that. I'm also just, really studying this Bengals offense over the last few years. There have been some puzzling things, and one of them is this insistence on just staying in shotgun. They were 90% shotgun in week 1. They were 86.5% shotgun last year. The year they went to the Super Bowl, they were 65% shotgun, 35% under center. And it makes a big difference for Joe. And I don't know why they got away from it. I don't know if it was, when you start giving your quarterback more input, and Joe just likes shotgun and feels more comfortable there. But the ability to get the downhill running game going, obviously, like being under center, they did a little more pistol in week 1, which was interesting too, and it worked. Zach Moss did well in those situations, but the ability to get the downhill running game going it has been critical for them. It was critical for them that year they went to the Super Bowl. But also, obviously, the play action game is just so much more effective, I think, when you're able to do it under center. And it's interesting. They've gone back to it at times. Like last year, the Niners game, they went heavy under center again, and they win that game. And Joe had a phenomenal game. The offense was great against that Niners defense, and then they get away from it again. So it's a puzzling thing for me. They were 80% pass on the first 5 drives. The 6th drive where they scored the touchdown, it was 50-50. There's this, they just take themselves, they forget about the run game. And I think Zach Moss is very good. I think they can do a lot of the things they did with Joe Mixon with Zach Moss. I don't think it's a huge downgrade there. So, I'm interested to see how much they adjust after that complete offensive failure in week 1, just being so pass heavy, being so shotgun heavy. Do they switch things up at all, or do they keep down this path that doesn't make a ton of sense to me, honestly?
Well, and I was watching, it did feel like the 3rd and mediums, if you can run the ball a bit more effectively, you're putting yourself maybe in some 3rd and short situations that are a little bit more advantageous to you. But when Joe Burrow was behind the sticks, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, man, he was throwing short a lot. He was throwing short of the sticks a lot in that first game. And that was part of the reason. It's like the Patriots did a good job rallying to the football, tackling. They were, bringing guys down off first contact. Was a great fundamental job by the New England Patriots. And the Bengals didn't really seem to have a lot of guys and a lot of juice to really make people miss either. And like that's something there's a couple of things that are just like a little bit concerning for me if I'm the Bengals. One of them is, Joe's confidence. The ball is getting out super quick. He wasn't trying to give plays downfield a chance. But even when you look at some of the plays down the field, there wasn't much there. It was a very predictable offense. Yeah. It was a very predictable week one offense, and the Patriots were all over it. And he was just working down to a hitch or working down to something underneath and hoping that's, that they can generate a first down with somebody, making somebody miss and making a play, and they just didn't have it. So I'm very curious to see, if to your point, if the Bengals are able to get ahead of the sticks, they're able to put themselves in better situations on early downs. And yeah, I mean, part of that's on Joe too. One thing when it comes
Hamilton,
go.
I think he had a great point. It's okay. I think he had a great point earlier. He was talking about how Christian Gonzalez was excellent in the game, and he kind of really disrupted what Jamar Chase and a lot of what the Frog Eagles offense was like, hey, how do we get Chase the ball? What can we do to get him the ball? And how do we make this work? And then you heard the frustration for Chase after the game. He said, hey, the coaching staff's got to put essentially said, if you're reading between the lines, they got to put me in position to get the ball. And I thought they kind of tried. It's just Christian Gonzalez played really well. And maybe it wasn't the most creative game plan you've ever seen, to your point, Kent. They were just kind of saying, hey, go out and win this route where, it's a one-on-one. We expect you to win. Whether it happened, didn't happen the way they wanted to is besides the point. So they tried. I think they're going to do that again. They're probably going to emphasize it a little bit more, especially without Higgins playing. They're going to have to really rely on Jamar Chase to get going. And so I don't know if the Chiefs have as good of a matchup for him as a Christian Gonzalez. I think Trent McDuffie's great. He's giving up a good bit of size to Jamar Chase, who's also happens to be one of the best, wide receivers in the NFL at the catch point, which has been the one area that Trent McDuffie has struggled a little bit more than everything else. But what Spags isn't afraid to do, and he never has been, they did it plenty of times against the Ravens. They'll do it plenty of times against any team they play. They'll just throw a bracket on somebody on third down. They'll be like, oh, wherever you align, in the slot, out wide, here's two guys. You're going to be inside and outside covered. We're just going to make somebody else beat us. And without T. Higgins, that gets a lot easier. When now all of a sudden Burrow's throwing to a bunch of guys that are newer to the team, that are younger guys that he isn't as familiar with, part of his superpower as a quarterback is diagnosing stuff, reading coverage, reading leverage, and then throwing it to where his receivers who are on the same page as him go make plays. If he doesn't feel as comfortable with those guys, to your point, Kit, he might be working down and trying to find a little bit safer of a throw. We're not going to go put the ball in harm's way to a guy that I don't have full trust in, who I don't know is reading the play out the exact same way I am, especially after, a couple times lately, he has had a little, bad interception luck or pass breakup luck compared to early in his career. So I can easily see a way where the Chiefs try to take Chase away, force Burrow to win with these other guys. And that might not come from one defender, but it'll be the double teams and stuff that they like to offer.
So when I was watching, we're talking, I think this all kind of ties together. Watching, some of the inconsistencies in the run game for the Bengals, some of these third and mediums to longs and them not being able to convert them. I go back to, hey, so yeah, maybe you run the ball a little bit more on first down. But one of the things I'm going to be fascinated in is what personnel the Bengals run out of, because I think they want to keep Leo Chenal off the field. And I think that's honestly, when you're looking at the early down success that the Chiefs had against the Bengals or against the Ravens, I mean, Leo Chenal was making a ton of plays on early downs, and he was a factor in the run game in keeping those plays 1-2 yards, the pass deflections. He was playing a huge role. So the Bengals really didn't play a ton of even not even a ton of 12, and I don't know if the Chiefs would counter 12 with a Leo Chenal anyway. So how do the Chiefs, counteract that? Do they try to keep Leo Chenal on the field with 3-down looks? Do they on early downs? Do they just play a base, like a 4-2, and you're leaving Leo Chenal off the field? I'm fascinated to see that because he was a monster on first down against the Ravens. So are the Bengals essentially able to eliminate him a little bit just by personnel groupings on first down? So that's something I'm kind of paying attention to is, if they're even able to get Leo Chenal on the field in some of those early base downs.
I will say too, as much as the Bengals did struggle in week one, they were a Mike Gesicki. If Mike Gesicki hangs onto that ball and makes that catch, or on the very next play, if Tanner Hudson doesn't fumble on the 1 yard line inexplicably, they still probably win that game. So again, the offense overall was abysmal, especially compared to their standards and the standard they've set since Burrow's been there. But yeah, it wasn't as bleak. I thought it was a great game plan from Gerard May and the Patriots. I thought you got to give them credit there for what they were able to do. They were able to make Burrow uncomfortable too. At times in the pocket, they abused Trent Brown, can't take full credit away from them either. But yeah, just wanted to point that out too. I don't think this offense is as horrible as they looked in week 1. And I think we're going to see some bigger things here and them test the Chiefs maybe a little bit more this week.
So I'm going to say nice things about them for the next 22 seconds and no longer. That game looked a lot worse watching a box score, not the real game. You watched the real game. It wasn't pretty for them, but mistakes, it just wasn't clean. It wasn't crisp. So they didn't look like the worst team in the NFL that's losing to the team projected to lose the least amount or win the least amount of games this year. That said, Fraudgles. So moving on, back to Ken's point.
15 seconds.
Back to Ken's point here. Talking about what kind of personnel they go with to try to run the ball. That's the problem with the Chiefs defense, though. They present you with an issue. Do you want to keep the Chiefs in nickel, their Buffalo package, their heavy nickel, and let the extra DBs get on the field? Because that's where Spag's eyes light up with all the pressure packages. Or do you want to have to handle Leo Schnell going up against your tight ends or pulling guards or whatever in the run game by going a little bit heavier and keeping him on there? That's a difficult kind of decision offenses are going to have to decide they want to do. Do you want to you want to obviously run into the lighter personnel, but that also means you're letting Spags play into his comfort zone a little bit. And then just looking at some tendencies here, Mike Gesicki's on the field. They're not running the ball. Just gonna throw that out there. Mike Gesicki's out there. They're not running the football. Tanner Hudson out there, apparently not running the football. So it might be a little easy. Eric Allcomb's out there. Probably going to consider running the football this time.
That's the stuff that bothers me the most. Yeah, the tendencies are crazy with them sometimes, and they really tip their hand on what they're going to do.
Just one game.
And I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, Ken. You made a great point about the personnel, and I didn't mean to totally derail from that. I'm glad Matt was able to get back there. I just that popped in my head, and I just wanted to get that out. So,
look, you are not the Matt that I'm worried about going off the rails and going somewhere it's not intended to go. Matt will probably answer. Blaine will pop a question up from the start of the show. Just on the chat from time to time. Oh, by the way, this was asked 40 minutes ago. Give me a defensive player to watch, Hamilton.
I'm going to be watching Justin Reed, and not because he came through on that prediction and came on up and Adams the morning after the win, which was phenomenal of him. But there's a lot of history. There's a lot of history in this rivalry for a lot of people. There's a lot of history, especially for Justin Reed and Jamar Chase. He had a big game against the Bengals last year. There was 2 sacks in that game last year. I also think we brought up Mike Gesicki. I think he has to be more involved. I think in this passing game, I think he's where if again, assuming T. Higgins is not out there. Gesicki is where they can try to create some matchup advantages, and I think Reed could have a significant role in dealing with him. Also being over the top of Jamar Chase at points. I think we're going to see things get a little chippy out there. We're going to see him have some chances to make some big plays, and I think if the Chiefs do win this one, I think Justin Reed is going to have a big role.
Matty Lane.
Do it again. He should bring back the bit where he just starts calling out other tight ends' names and talking about them this week. That would be hilarious. Just own it at this point.
Yeah, and the Bengals have a different tight end every year too. So right. Just maybe call him Irv Smith. Don't even acknowledge him. Start calling him.
All right, so I'm going to do 2. I'm going to cheat. Kent took 2 last time on offense, so I'm allowed 2 on defense this time. Jaden Hicks, does he get on the field for the defense? I think they could have used it. Felt like the Ravens game would be a game that Hicks could have got out there as they were trying to play more DBs to keep speed up, but also wanted to get some bigger bodies to help stop the run. Jamari Connor didn't have a bad game, but he was a little out of control. So, is that something that they feel like is going to correct, or do you maybe start to see a certain package or a series here or there go to Jaden Hicks when they do want to go into those 3 safety looks going forward? But the guy that I'm going to have my eyes on because he's definitely going to play, I think he needs a little bit of a bounce back game after the Ravens game. And as I said all week, you can't take anything too seriously that the Ravens offense does because it's a one-of-one offense. Like how you have to play them as a defense doesn't matter week in and week out. George Karlaftis didn't have his best game, but he was also just asked to contain a lot. And that's what the Chiefs do with their defensive ends versus the Ravens. He was still generally good against the run, but you didn't see even in his couple one-on-one pass rush reps, we saw Chris Jones just absolutely destroying everybody, which he does that. But George Karlaftis didn't have that same level of success when it did look like he was trying to pin back his ears. So this could be a bounce back game. Going up a lot of times, I'm going to assume against Trent Brown, who had an abysmal game. Even if you want to kick him inside, Kappa, the right guard, didn't have a particularly good game. So the right side especially has some familiarity with Orlando Brown Jr., who hasn't always been, how shall we say, a lockdown left tackle in the NFL. So it could be a good Karlaftis bounce back game where he has a chance to get a lot of pressure, but especially off that right side.
Trent Brown was unplayable. he
when
looked
his Amaris
out
man's
of
coming
shape.
back.
Well, he's a limited participant today, but they need him back yesterday. That thing should look a lot better. Trent Brown is a problem. So I think that interior pressure could be a big factor for the Chiefs. I think Chris Jones is going to he's going to create some interior pressure. I think the lane discipline will be a little bit better because you still have to have some lane discipline when you're playing against a Joe Burrow. So you have to have that. But weirdly, you talk about George Karlaftis. I thought Felix Anudike-Uzomah's get off was a little bit better than it had been in the preseason. So I thought he had some better snaps getting off the football. It wasn't as late as it had been. If you're talking about someone truly just athletically burst, being able to run up the arc and try to run around these guys, I think Felix Anudike-Uzomah has the best chance to try to outrun one of these tackles. And so if you're getting interior pressure and there's really not a ton of place to go, I think Felix could actually be in line to clean up one of these plays here in this game. So I'm keeping an eye on Felix Anudike-Uzomah. I think this is a chance for him to, hopefully, he can have a decent get off here or there. And with the interior pressure that the Chiefs can create with George or with Chris Jones, maybe Felix can clean something up here. So I'm gonna keep an eye on Felix Anudike-Uzomah in this game. Let's go to game predictions. Hamilton, give me a prediction for this football game.
I think the Bengals come out and have a much better game than they had in week one. They always get up for the Chiefs. They always play their best football against the Chiefs. We talked to Zach Taylor too on our training camp tour, and he admitted he coaches differently, knowing Mahomes is on the other side. And I think he's the best version of himself when Mahomes is on the other side. He's more aggressive in situations where he should be aggressive, which against other teams sometimes he's not. So I do think the Bengals keep this one close, but I do think ultimately the Chiefs find a way to get it done. 31-24 Chiefs is my prediction here.
Madeleine.
Oh, me. My bad. I do think that the Prodigals are going to get excited for this game. They're already inviting people out. They're talking about the 2021 game. They want everyone to come watch. They're going back to Burrowhead, as they like to call it. I'm sure that they are very excited for this game. Last year, it doesn't count because they didn't have their starting quarterback. So now we got to go back to the year before where they split 1-1. They lost the important game, but they won the meaningless one, so on and so forth. They really like this game. It's one of my favorite rivalries in all sports. Trash talk aside, it's perfect that there's actually two teams who don't seem to like each other and their fan bases don't seem to like each other. It's a lot of fun. So for that reason, I do think that the game starts out a little bit closer than I think these two teams should be on paper or how we saw them play in week one. I do think as it goes on, though, you kind of start to see a little bit of the separation. The Chiefs just are, finally, I think, clearly a better team top to bottom than what the Bengals have been over the past couple of years. You could make the case that it was pretty similar. I think the Chiefs are separating themselves. I like some of the answers that the Chiefs have already started this season with that kind of respond to how the Bengals have usually played them both on offense and defense. I'm not entirely sold that Joe Burrow is the same quarterback that he was pre-injuries, like multiple there, like I'm adding the calf and the wrist together. His hand didn't look bad throwing the ball, but we saw how often he was shaking it. That could be a tick. It could also be bothering him. We won't know until this keeps going. Hamilton talked about the play action stuff. He doesn't like turning his back, but also last year, he really couldn't. And I know he's removed from the calf injury now, but I'm not sold that he's 100% the same guy that he once was. They also lose one of their offensive minds in this coaching staff. I know he wasn't calling calling all the plays, but they lose him. How's it look? I got the Chiefs taking this one. We're going to say 34-20, but I think it starts out pretty close and the Chiefs kind of open it up there in the second half.
So, I think you can even see like there's a little bit of sports hate out there, even in the chat. Like there's a little bit of trash talk happening. Matt's been calling them the Froggles the whole time, and this is a tremendous rivalry. This has been it is the most fun. It is easily the most fun rivalry that the Chiefs have right now. It's not any of the AFC West teams. This is the most enjoyable. There's real hate. I mean, Jamar Chase will not acknowledge Patrick Mahomes as his tribal chief.
Great
it's just. Yeah, he's just like he won't even like. I mean, it's fun, man. It is real hate, and like I think with fans on the outside looking in, yeah, there's a little bit of competitiveness bubbling, but it's hard. I think on the Chiefs side, I think you even see it's pretty muted for the most part to this point relative to other years. I think the 2 Super Bowl thing kind of like it maybe hinders the juices from flowing the same way that you would hope, right? The good news for Chiefs fans is the guys in the locker room that doesn't apply. Like the competitiveness of Patrick LeVon Mahomes is not going to let the fact that the Bengals lost to the Patriots last week, or the fact that the Chiefs have 2 Super Bowls in the last 2 years and 3 rings, and Joe Burrow has 0. He's not going to let those realities and those absolute facts get in the way of his competitive fire. And so I really do think that, this team is going to come out firing. The frustrations of last year with this team are going to be manifested today, where Patrick Mahomes is not going to let this team coast through the regular season. They are not going to allow what happened last year to happen again. And I think the first time you will see that is the competitive fire in a rivalry game that still means a lot to these guys in the locker room, despite all of the success. I'm going to go 27-20. The Chiefs win this game. I think they are in control for the game. I don't think that this game is decided by whether or not someone wears black or white shoes. I think, if anything, maybe it's a late touchdown. I think the Chiefs are in control. I really wanted to make this 23-20, which was the score the last time that these 2 quarterbacks matched up. But we're just going to go ahead and live in a little bit different, in my opinion, reality. The Chiefs win 27-20. That is going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening and supporting KCSN. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
Spaghetti chili's
Hamilton's
going down.